Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the 2022 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. This competitive advantage talk is presented by Kager, also known as Craft Analytics Group. My name is Jen Whaley, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. And it's my pleasure to introduce the presentation, How Golf and Health Science Experts Work Together During a Global Pandemic, presented by the PGA of America. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Arjun Chowdhury, Chief Innovation and Administrative Officer for the PGA of America, to the stage.
Sweet, thanks. It's a bit awkward. I realized I'm wearing the same clothes as I did in that picture a second ago. Anyways, I really appreciate MIT and the entire organizing group for having us here today. I'm really here to talk about a story. You know, a lot of people here are going to talk about pretty heavy data analytics. I'm going to tell you about more of a strategic story. A lot of people will come up to us once they learn that myself or my colleagues over here work for the PGA of America, and they say, oh, you must be super excited. Golf's just in this boom nowadays. And we're like, yeah, but what most people don't realize is there's this underlying kind of decision strategy that happened around that, and it was really about bringing together PGA professionals and golf operational experts with health experts. So I'll just get into it now. So just in March 2020, like happened for every single other person, we went into crisis management. And it's the sign of a strategic plan. So we took out our strategic plan, put it on the board, and that's what it's supposed to do, right? And in good times and in crises, you're supposed to be able to bring out your strategic plan and go, let's think through that lens. Our mission really is to serve our 28,000 members and to grow the game. And we look at it through a prism of 4 key stakeholders, which are written here. So members, business, people, and game. And so we kind of started going piece by piece and going, how do we make sure we get people to the other side of this? So on the member side, we quickly created a relief fund with the entire industry and started distributing grants of about $8 or $9 million to those members and others in the golf industry that just couldn't put food on their table at that point. So something we were super excited about. From a business perspective, we said, okay, we have major championships, just like everybody else has kind of major sporting events. Oh, a lot of folks that are speaking here today. How do we ensure that those can still occur? Because they are the lifeblood of the organization from a financial perspective. We were lucky, or are lucky, that we recovered with insurance that included pandemic coverage. So that has helped the process, but we still needed to make sure we could create some levels of events. From a people perspective, I mean, frankly, that's where I should have started, but it was making sure our teammates were safe, right? So we shut down the office that day, made everybody go home. Luckily, we had just translated to switch to G Suite, so kind of virtual conferences and meetings were really easy. And the last place is the game, right? And that is, how do we ensure the growth of the game and participation in the game? And that's really where I want to talk to you about the story today. So from a golfer perspective, there's really 3 types of golfers that we've seen, right? One is win, right? That person that's really driven by that competition. The second thing is socialize, right? And that's that person that really wants to be out there engaging with other people. And then the third is the escape, right? Golf is almost meditative in its nature, and it gives people that really escape opportunity. And if you think about those kind of 3 concepts, that's what like COVID took from all of us, right? At that one moment. And as we kind of started to think about it, we were like, okay, we've taken our golfers, our consumer base needs something, and how can we give that back to them, right? So we started with what did we know, right? And we knew what we knew, which was very minimal at that time. We knew kind of COVID transmitted through the air, it reduced transmission to further distance, and with the air circulation, contact transmission, I was one of those same people that was wiping every box down, all that type of stuff, but that became an evolving understanding as well. And then we started talking about what do we know from a golf perspective, right? And the first thing is it's played outdoors, right? We know that, and that seems like that helps from an air circulation perspective. It's easy to socially distance, right? So you're usually just walking with your friends. There's a small number of potential touch points. There's a there's the potential for a lot of touch points, but you can also minimize those kind of points. So you talk about frictionless check-in, like remote check-in, online tee times, things of that nature. Those are possible and they exist. And the last thing is scheduled gathering times. And what we mean by that is simply tee times, right? Like there's 4 people that play at a time spread out 10 to 20 minutes apart. So there's kind of a specific time, so you're actually having minimized groups. And so what happened is like we were starting talking about it, and fortunately, we are guided by a CEO in Seth Waugh who has brought multiple companies through crises, and he talked to us about, hey, it is the private industry's responsibility, not just the government's industry, to help society through crises like these. And sports is that tip of the spear. And can golf be part of that? Like, can we, the little we know, he felt we could be a solution. As the child of an infectious disease doctor that practiced in Massachusetts for the last 35 years, my response was like, no. I'm like a hypochondriac. I was like, no, we got to shut it down. No way, Seth. And obviously, we argued and debated back and forth, and we kind of came to this conclusion like, okay, maybe. But none of us have any idea what we're talking about from a health professional standpoint. So let's go talk to some folks. And so we're fortunate enough, because golf is this beautiful game of connections, that our board member was the former president of Smithsonian, and so knew Dr. Fauci previously. And then our marketing partners knew the CDC really well because of their relationship with Emory. So they were able to connect us to those 2 groups. Right? And it's not me, this is the point where like I get to brag on my friends and our colleagues and PGA professionals, led by a gentleman on our team, John Easterbrook, who's our chief membership officer, who's spent 3 decades doing golf operations, as well as other folks like Jimmy Terry, who's our head of properties, and other PGA members we were bringing able to the table. We brought them to the table along with these health experts. We also engaged directly with a couple doctors, including a professor here at a BU. So we brought all of them to the table and said, I'm sure many of you remember that kind of opening back America guidelines. And we took those and we took golf operations manuals, and phase by phase, we said, what is allowable, right? So, and it got to the point where, as I mentioned, contact transmission and that evolution of understanding. I'm not sure if anybody golfs here, but there was a noodle. We put like a little noodle in the hole, and so there's a lot of falsely claimed hole-in-ones that it was that noodle that stopped them from that hole-in-one when the time they got there. But that allowed people not to put all their hands in, and there's no that transmission and all that stuff. So what we were able to do then is take that and create back to golf guidelines. And again, this is another point where I get to brag on our friends, our marketing team, Joe Hoax in the audience over here, him along with Jeff Price. We're able to package those materials and then push it out to our PGA professionals, right? PGA professionals run the facilities nationwide. If we remember, like, pandemic was very hop, skip to town, so everything was controlled by the local county. So they would then be able to go in to their local health professional or their local health administrator and lobby for golf to come back, because we showed the guidelines backed by the CDC and how we were going to do it in a responsible manner, right? So once that was able to happen, we were able to get the kind of the supply side going. But on the flip side, now that the supply side was there, we needed to then turn and get the demand side going. And so again, to the marketing department's credit, they worked with our partners like ESPN and CBS and NBC, along with kind of well-known folks like a Steph Curry and others, and create a whole marketing campaign to push out there and said, you know what, golf is a safe place to play, and here's how you can enjoy it in a responsible manner. And so that's the backstory, and now this is kind of the effects of what we've seen. And it's really incredible for what everybody has seen, right? So just to put it into perspective a little bit, right? We had 600,000 more players last year, more participants in the game. And the cool thing about this participant number, which is around 37.5 million right now, is we're seeing it from a lot of new demographics, right? And we're growing those demographics we want, right? So 25% of golfers are now female, 21% of golfers now people of color. We've increased junior golfers by 25% over the last 3 years, led by programs like that we have called PGA Junior League, which had about 60,000 people last year, which was the highest level. Golf's total reach is 106 million, and total reach means they play, they read, or they watch golf. And then one of the other things that's really exciting is the rounds, right? How does that translate to rounds? Because ultimately rounds is putting revenue into the hands of our PGA professionals, right? So what we've always been worried about is like this was just going to be a spike and down, right? And like how do we manage that? 2020 is going to be, it was awesome. 2021 is going to be like a go down, or the second COVID, is done, we're going to see a big dip. What we've seen is 529 million rounds played in 2021. And for context, that's 5% up off of 2020, which was 14% up off of the year before. And what that shows us is that our PGA professionals in the field, at a grassroots level, at facilities, are doing an amazing job of retention, right? Golf has traditionally suffered from a tough time in retaining golfers, so we'll bring them in, and that we'll get that 3 million new beginners, but we won't always do a good job of maintaining them. And what this is showing to us as we move from a pandemic to an endemic is that we are doing a good job, PGA professionals are doing a great job in the field of retaining those golfers. Just another statistic here for context, right? Golf is a $84 billion plus industry if you kind of think about the entire ecosystem of it. And one of the things we've seen is the impact from a golf equipment perspective, right? So you think about this stat here that says plus 35% pre-COVID versus 2021 in terms of golf equipment kind of shipments. It's incredibly impactful. I'd also say, I believe anecdotally that number would have been much higher if it weren't for some of the supply chain issues we've all incurred through COVID, right? It's, you go up to a golf facility and say, yeah, I want to get custom clubs and do that. And they go, okay, it's going to be 18 months. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to make that purchase, right? So I do believe if there was, COVID's impacted a lot, including supply chain. If that was shortened, that purchase was shortened, we would have had further increases there as well. So we've recently partnered with a company called Sagacity. We invested in them and partnered with them. And they're a benchmarking company, in essence. So what they're trying to do, or what we are trying to do together, is create something like the STAR report for golf, right? And just really a fundamental benchmarking data platform, because that doesn't exist right now in golf. So they started out in Arizona, so they've already got a good amount of penetration in Arizona. I just thought this was really interesting because I told them we were coming here, like to show some data. This event happened, last month, the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is historically always the Phoenix market's best time for golf, right? And as you'll see, like by the slide behind me, all the data and all the key metrics is up, and it's up significantly. The number that jumped off to me, I don't think it's actually on this page, is the average price per round went from $72 to $101, right, during that period between 2019 and 2021. So just think about that kind of economic impact and how that translates to value for our PGA professionals ultimately. The last thing I'll just leave you with is the impact of collaboration and how that works. So the impact of what happened in the US wasn't possible if all golf's governing bodies didn't work together. So the PGA Tour and the USGA and the LPGA, Augusta, everybody kind of worked together to do those marketing campaigns, to push out the message, to have shifts in schedules. So that all was a collaborative effort, and everybody going, hey, we're all mission driven, and we're seeing a kind of a future that we all need to work together with. The other thing that was an impact to me was this last summer, I think it was, I was sitting there at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship with the head of the International Golf Federation. And I was talking to him about the impact that Back to Golf has had, and telling him the same story. And he said, yeah, Arjun, I know. And I was like, oh. He's like, remember you shared the guidelines with us. You forwarded those guidelines with us. I was like, oh yeah, I did. He goes, well, I took those and I sent it to the 100 plus golf federations in the 100 plus countries we work with. And they then were able to lobby their local health departments to actually reopen golf, which successfully happened with a number of countries, right? And so I say that it's just like, you forget about sometimes the fortune of the health professionals we have, the fortune of connections we have, and the concept of just that kind of simple email forward and the impact it can have to a lot of folks. So that's really all I have. I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit and just open up for questions. Thank you. I don't know if she's running or going.
Sorry.
I was like, are you leaving, Jen? What's happening?
So thank you for that presentation. And I'll preface this by, I was one of those players that bought the set in July 2020 and have started playing since. And I think one thing I've noticed or did not notice was that my friends have been playing for a long time said it's so much harder to get a tee time now. You don't know that because I've just always found it a hard time to get a tee time. So is there any conversation about that changing in the future of more courses opening up, different ways of how we meet the demand that's happening now, or this continued spike that's occurred?
Yeah, so I think this right now, certainly tee times are more difficult to get, or the tee time you want specifically. That prime tee time is more difficult to get. We haven't seen kind of any significant growth in new courses, if that's what your question, or really decline. There was a historical decline in closure in courses, so we've seen that to even out, which is great. What we're seeing is exciting is new ways to get involved in the game. So we all see things like Topgolf and the incredible impact that has. We actually also did a partnership recently with a company called Golf Plus VR, right? So it's a VR golf game. They just launched full course in October in the VR space, and we embedded one of our clubs, Valhalla Golf Club, in November, right? And so since November to now, which is about 4 months, there have been 800,000 rounds played, right? And just for context, Valhalla on average has about 15,000 rounds, so that means more than 50 years worth of Valhalla rounds. It's only been open for 35 years, right? So there's just other ways we need to continuing to open the funnel to create opportunities when maybe you can't get the tee time that maybe exactly makes sense for you. How do we also drive engagement elsewhere?
Hi, Arjun. Quick question on, you mentioned about how PGA professionals have done a great job of retaining all of kind of the new folks that have come into the world of golf. Do you mind just expanding on that a little bit more in terms of some of the kind of the data strategies that you guys are using at the PGA of America to think about how, on a kind of a more macro level and for the future of the game, to keep all these folks who are very actively engaged in the last year and a half? What does that look like in the next decade?
Yeah.
Obviously, we hear all about, or I've been reading about, the development of the Frisco facility and how there's a lot of data-driven companies that are going to be involved in that. Just curious if there's kind of this data revolution that's kind of about to start in the golf world.
Yeah, no problem. So the first smart thing we did was hire the person behind you. So Fahad right there. So it's his job now to figure it all out, right? I would say. But no, we frankly recognize it's a deficiency that we've had, and that was the reason we brought in someone with his expertise. Is we have a good database, but we don't have the robustness behind that data that really can maximize the help for PGA professionals and drive them to the right people. We've also recently, over the last couple of years, brought PGA.com back in-house. It used to be a partnership with the idea of utilizing it to drive participation in the game. So we have a supply side of PGA professionals, and we have kind of this brand authority. How do we create tools So that way, you go, I want to book a lesson, it's really easy. You can find a PGA professional locally. So we're starting to do that, but that is the reason we need that kind of robust CDP, and we're working on a strategy now. I mean, just frankly, we haven't figured it out yet. He's only like 2 months on the job. Month 4, you should figure it out, though. You got 2 more months.
I had another question, actually. So referencing the waste management at Phoenix, and from one of my understanding of a different type of fan engagement, especially on the 16th hole, is that something that your team is embracing, this time a more young crowd or kind of more energetic and throwing beer cans onto the field, onto the course type of mentality of growing the game? Or what are the conversations you're having around that in terms of the floodgates opening to younger demographics joining?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. So kind of our general perspective is there's a golf for everybody, right? I don't think people realize that, and maybe people have false perceptions where, okay, it's only a private club and it's this or it's that. It's kind of like restaurants, right? Like if you want like fast dining, like fast casual dining, you can get that. If you want a Michelin star rated restaurant, you can get that, right? So we're very much of that mindset. I mean, I think PGA Junior League, that program we have is developed in that context, right? It's a team golf program with kids wearing jerseys, just like Little League. And then the Ryder Cup, which is hopefully everybody's favorite event in golf, it symbolizes really that. Like you go to the first tee, and people are singing "God Bless America." There's crazy chants, there's waves. There's just something like energetic and beautiful about that brings more people into the game. Doesn't mean like the other form of fandom isn't okay. We do believe that there's multiple ways to be a fan, just like there's multiple ways to play. Cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.